For 300 years, one name has haunted the pages of New England history: Captain Thomas Hamilton. Who was he? To his descendants, he was the man who started it all, the first of their line in the New World. But to genealogists and historians, he was only a ghost. They searched everywhere, in dusty archives, in faded family Bibles, in colonial shipping logs, but the trail always went cold. What was his story? Well, now, after centuries of silence, a revolutionary new tool has finally cracked the case. DNA analysis has reached back in time, and it's about to reveal what the history books never could. Today, on Trace Your New England Roots. Colonial America was a world was a world of rugged survival, political turmoil, and new beginnings. It was a time when some family stories were carved in stone, while others seemed to vanish into the mist. The story of Captain Thomas Hamilton was one that was pure mist. For his descendants, scattered from New England to Nova Scotia, he was their foundational patriarch. But for anyone trying to trace the family tree further back, he was a complete enigma. The man's life before stepping foot in America was a total blank. What little they knew was just a handful of fragments that just refused to fit together. Records placed him in the busy growing world of late 17th century New England. Family stories passed down over the generations painted a picture of a man who was of some standing. He was a ship's captain who had crossed the Atlantic. But that only just led to more questions. Where did he come from? Was he English, Scottish? Was he Irish? Every theory seemed to have a counter theory, and every clue led to another dead end. For centuries, researchers threw themselves at the puzzle. They combed through shipping manifests in Boston, hoping his name would pop up on a passenger list. They studied land deeds in Rhode Island and Connecticut, looking for a signature that might mention a hometown. They even scrutinized marriage and death records, but nothing gave them that one crucial clue about his origins. The problem was, Thomas Hamilton was a fairly common name. Multiple men with that name shows up in records from that era, creating a tangled mess of possibilities that was impossible to sort out. It was the definition of a genealogical brick wall, and it stood for an astonishing 300 years. Generation after generation of family historians would pick up the trail, full of hope, only to be met with the same dead air. They could trace their family line right up to this colonial patriarch, but never one step beyond. It was as if he had simply appeared out of thin air on the shores of the New World, a man without a past. And it mattered. For the family, this was about their own identity. To truly know who you are, you have to know where you come from. And without knowing Captain Thomas's origins, a huge chapter of their family story was it was just missing. Were they related to the powerful ducal Hamiltons of Scotland, or were their roots more humble? For historians, solving this one mystery was a chance to better understand the great wave of migration to colonial America. Every personal story shines a light on the larger forces that pushed people to leave everything behind and risk it all for a new life. Captain Thomas was a missing piece of that puzzle. The paper trail was exhausted. It seemed like the secret of Captain Thomas Hamilton was going to stay a secret forever. The case was cold, but then a new kind of science emerged, one that promised to find answers, not in old books, but in the blood of the living. Long before DNA testing, the only tools you had were patience and paper. The hunt for Captain Thomas Hamilton was a masterclass in old school detective work, an effort that spanned generations and played out in quiet libraries and dusty courthouse basements. Now, this wasn't a world you could just Google. We're talking brittle paper, elegant, but often unreadable cursive writing, and records scattered across different states and even different continents. Researchers, they started with what they knew for sure, that Captain Thomas Hamilton, he lived, he existed. They had records of his children born in the colonies, and they had a rough time frame for his life in the late 1600s. And then from there, the investigation spun outward. They looked for his marriage record. Who was his wife? Maybe her family held a clue. They found her, but her records offered no hints about her husband's origins. Next, they checked land records. Did he own property? And sometimes a deed would mention a previous hometown. But in this case, they found deeds, but none of them had that golden ticket, a mention of a town or county in the old world. They even analyzed his will, a document that often gives a last personal glimpse into someone's life. Now, surely he'd mention a relative back home, but his will, while carefully dividing up his American property, was completely silent about any connections across the Atlantic. The most exciting clue was really his title. He was a captain. This suggested that he was a man of the sea, which opened up a whole new path for researchers. They spent countless hours digging through naval records and shipping manifests in Boston, Newport, and other colonial ports. If he indeed was a captain, his arrival must have been documented. They found men named Thomas Hamilton, but it was impossible to prove any of them was the specific man who settled down and started a family. For every promising lead, the trail went cold. It was a genealogical limbo. Decades of research had painted a rich picture of his life in America, but his identity before America remained a perfect void. Then everything changed. The solution wouldn't be found in an archive, but in a clean, sterile lab. The early 2000s saw the rise of a revolutionary new tool for genealogists: commercial DNA testing. Suddenly, history wasn't just about what was written on paper, it was about what was written in our cells. In 2002, a group of researchers started the Hamilton Surname DNA Project. Their goal was to map the genetic landscape of the entire Hamilton clan worldwide. Here's the simple but brilliant idea behind it. One piece of our DNA, the Y chromosome, is passed down from father to son, almost unchanged, like a genetic surname. And it's a biological signature that connects a man living today directly to his father, his grandfather, his great father, and so on, in an unbroken line stretching back through time. By analyzing specific markers on the Y chromosome of living Hamilton men, researchers could create a unique genetic barcode for their paternal line. If two men share the same Y DNA profile, it's almost certain they share a common ancestor somewhere in the past. The Hamilton DNA Project began gathering samples from Hamiltons all over the globe, slowly piecing together a massive genetic puzzle. For the descendants of the mysterious Captain Thomas, this was a game changer. This paper trail did go cold, but the genetic trail was alive, breathing, and well, flowing in the veins of his living male descendants. The plan was simple. Find a man who could prove his direct, unbroken male lineage back to Captain Thomas through traditional records. Then have him take a Y DNA test. His genetic signature could then be compared against the hundreds of other Hamiltons in the database. Would he match a known Scottish branch, maybe a line from Ireland, or something else entirely? To make sure their findings were rock solid, the researchers used a tough methodology called the genealogical proof standard. This requires that DNA evidence be woven together with historical records to build a single, undeniable case. The sample was collected, the vial was sent off, and for the first time in centuries, the family and the historians had a real reason to hope. All they could do now was wait. And while they waited for those results, if you're finding this historical detective story as fascinating as I am, this is the perfect moment to show your support. Go ahead and click those like and subscribe buttons. It is completely free for you, but it sends a powerful signal to the YouTube algorithm that this information is valuable. And it helps to get this video recommended to other budding family historians and genealogists just like you, which allows this community and this channel to grow. That in turn enables me to continue to bring you great content like this. Also, I truly enjoy reading your comments and sharing in your genealogical journeys. So please leave a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. Okay, so let's now get back to it. Let's look at the revelation that they experienced. The wait must have been agonizing. Generations of searching, of hitting dead ends had all come down to this one set of data that would arrive in an email. When the results finally came in, they were more than just a string of numbers. They were the key to a 300-year-old lock. The Y-DNA profile from Captain Thomas Hamilton's descendant was uploaded and compared against the massive Hamilton DNA Project database. The algorithm searched for a match, and then there it was. It wasn't a maybe or a partial match. It was a direct, undeniable hit. The DNA of the New England Hamiltons, who had been lost in genealogical fog for so long, perfectly matched a very specific and well-documented group, the Hamiltons of County Tyrone, Ireland. All of a sudden, the ghost had a hometown. The phantom had a place. Captain Thomas wasn't just some random person who showed up in America. He was part of a distinct family line from Ulster, Ireland, with genetic links to the prominent Abercorn Hamiltons, and the DNA proved it. Now this is where it gets really interesting. The DNA gave researchers a giant flashing sign pointing to County Tyrone. While it didn't magically produce a birth certificate for our Captain Thomas, it allowed them to look at those confusing old records with brand new eyes. Armed with a location, the once overwhelming search was now laser focused. The paper trail, lit up by the bright light of the DNA evidence, began to make sense. The 300-year-old brick wall hadn't just been cracked, it had been demolished. This revelation did more than just give Captain Thomas a home. It placed him and all his American descendants right in the middle of a rich and turbulent chapter of history. His Y-DNA signature connected him to the plantation of Ulster, a period in the 17th century when thousands of Protestant Scots were settled in the north of Ireland. His ancestors were among them. Now, this historical context explained so much. Captain Thomas was ethnically Scottish, but born and raised in Ireland. His family members were colonists in a land with a long, complicated history. It explained his skills as a mariner, living in a region with strong ties back to Scotland and across the sea. And it explained why he might have been driven to migrate once more crossing the Atlantic for the promise of the American colonies. The discovery sent waves through the family. For 300 years, they had simply been American. But now they were part of the great the Scots-Irish diaspora, a group that had a massive impact on the formation of the United States. They could trace their roots not just to a colonial port, but also to the hills of County Tyrone and to the heartlands of Scotland before that. This also clarified their spot in the larger Hamilton family tree, separating their line from others, like that of the founding father, Alexander Hamilton, whose family came from the West Indies. The New England Hamiltons now had their own unique story. The solution to the Captain Thomas mystery became a landmark case in genetic genealogy. It was a perfect example of how combining Y-DNA testing with rigorous historical research can solve even the coldest cases. The story was no longer about a missing man. It was about a family found, an identity that was restored, and a history rewritten. So, in the end, the story of Captain Thomas Hamilton is about more than just adding a new branch to a family tree. It's a powerful story about that deep human need to know where we come from and the incredible power of technology to help us find out. For 3 centuries, he was a question mark at the very beginning of a family's American journey. Generations have since lived and died without solving the mystery. What history once hid, science revealed. A single DNA test reached back across the centuries and gave a ghost a name, a home, and a history. It's a powerful reminder that our past isn't really lost. It lives on inside of us, written in the biological code passed down from parent to child. We are all walking archives. This case gives hope to countless others who have hit that same brick wall in their own family research. It shows that with the right tools and a collaborative spirit, secrets that have been kept for centuries can finally be brought into the light. The past is never truly past. Sometimes you just need a new way to look for it. If you love digging into this historical mystery, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell for more stories like this, and we'd love to hear from you in the comments. Is there an unsolved mystery in your own family tree? What question about your ancestry do you wish you could answer? Thanks for watching. Until next time, this is Eric from Trace Your New England Roots, where history starts with your family.